Good evening, I'm Matt Ernst. If you are tuning in for Lubbock News Now with Kurt Kaiser, don't worry, he'll be back at 8, but stick around because we have something pretty special for you tonight. Welcome to A Night for the Museum, made possible by Samuel Jackson, Hearst Farm Supply, and Fox 34. We're so glad you could join us tonight. The Museum of Agriculture is a special place. It's important not only to Lubbock, to our area, to our region, to everyone. Most people are now a few generations removed from being tied directly to living on the farm. To production agriculture can kind of get easy to just lose the story of how everything happens. It is important that there is a place that preserves the history and also shows the future of agriculture to our livelihood, to our area. It is certainly so important. And guess what? Tonight is going to be a lot of fun. There is an online auction and raffle that is going on right now. You can log on to agriculturehistory.org to find out more. Stay tuned here as well. Let's open up with music from Lone Prairie and keep an eye on the bottom of the screen. Those businesses and individuals are our virtual sponsors for this evening.
1, 2, 3.
Walking my way down the trail, now I'm ready to roll. Time to get scooting, I'm shooting my way down the hole.
To hit those senderos and find me amigos, we'll kick up the dust as we go.
A ride in the skyline, I'd say that it's high time to start the day rocking to roll.
Daylight is burning, it's time we get churning. This work ain't just going away.
There's cattle for busting and horses to trust as we're rounding up doggies today.
And pay will be due when we're finally through, so let's put our saddles in play.
When chores are all done, we'll be heading for fun. Let's start the day off the right way. Rocking my way down the trail, now I'm ready to roll. Time to get scooting, I'm shooting my way down the hole.
To hit those senderos and find me amigos, we'll kick up the dust as we go.
A ride in the skyline, I'd say that it's high time to start the day rocking to roll. Rocking my way down the trail, now I'm ready to roll. Time to get scooting, I'm shooting my way down the hole.
To hit those senderos and find me amigos, kick up the dust as we go.
A ride in the skyline, I'd say that it's high time to start the day rocking to roll.
To hit those senderos and find me amigos, kick up our heels as we go.
A ride in the skyline, I'd say that it's high time to start the day rocking to roll. A ride in the skyline, I'd say that it's high time to start the day rocking to roll.
And that was Lone Prairie. I'd like to remind you about A Night for the Museum silent auction. What you need to do right now is log on to agriculturehistory.org to bid, donate, or buy a raffle ticket. agriculturehistory.org. The auction ends at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock. So if you haven't already, log on now. I'd also like to give a shout out to two of our event co-chairs, Steve Moffitt with Lubbock Electric and Tanner Swearingen with Lone Star State Bank. They go above and beyond whenever there is a need for the museum. Now it's time for our singing of the national anthem by Garrett Nelson, Tiffany Nelson, and Berkeley Timmons, also known as Blackwater Draw.
Oh, say, can the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And now let's learn a little bit more about our title sponsor, Samuel Jackson, in this Sponsor Spotlight.
Samuel Jackson Incorporated. I'm president. It was founded in June of 1991. Okay, most of our business is done in cotton gins, so cotton relates very tightly to agriculture. The process efficiencies that we impact change the bottom line for processing that agricultural commodity. Well, I'm actually third generation in this business. Began with my grandfather in the 1920s. We'll come up to our 100th anniversary in 2028. About 5 years ago, we found ourselves becoming water dependent on our wells, and they weren't as dependable as they had been before the 2011 drought. We had to address it in some form or fashion. So when we were looking at all of the various cost aspects of other water sources, someone pointed out that our roof area might be one of our biggest advantages in addressing that. And we didn't know anything about catching rainfall. So we started learning. And that was in September of 2015. This next month, in September of 2020, we will mark our 5-year anniversary of having switched to rainfall completely for factory operations and our domestic use. We've survived snowstorm Goliath, very cold. We've survived some of the highest winds recorded in that time frame, the longest period with no rainfall in that time period, some of the hottest temperatures are approaching record levels in that, all with above ground large cisterns. And so we've learned a lot of tricks and a lot of characteristics of that system, and I've got to say it's become highly addictive. The people of West Texas are really what keep us in West Texas. Their work ethic, their honesty, their innovation, their courage at attacking problems from whatever aspect they need to attack it with. For one, I find this inspiring to be around here. And then it was Tommy Woolham who sensitized me to the need for support and active board members and so forth. So we became a named sponsor for the Night for the Museum. The biggest asset in West Texas, I think everyone would agree, is our friendly, hospitable nature. I'm very, very proud to call West Texas home.
And as we open up the program, here's a special message from the speaker who started this event 10 years ago, Texas country reporter Bob Phillips.
Hi, I'm Bob Phillips with Texas Country Reporter. This year marks the 10th A Night for the Museum, since many of you and I got together at the Lubbock Civic Center way back in 2011. It's hard to believe all that has happened with our museum since that first fundraiser that set so many improvements in motion. We can all be proud that we have worked together to make those things happen, because this museum isn't just some blast from the past where we can look at old farming implements and machinery. This museum represents an important part of our history. Some would argue, and I wouldn't disagree, that it represents the most important part of our history. Where would we be without farming? Well, the answer is easy. We wouldn't be at all. That's because it's the American farmer that feeds and clothes the world. And one of the most productive areas on the planet is right here on the South Plains of Texas. As we travel around the state in search of stories for TCR, a lot of times we find that no matter how big something has grown, usually it all starts with the hard work and determination of one person. That's pretty much the same story for what started 50 years ago as the Lubbock County Historical Collection and what we now know as the Bayer Museum of Agriculture. It was the very determined Alton Brazel that set this whole thing in motion. You see, Mr. Brazel recognized the importance of two key things. The first is that Lubbock and the surrounding area is one of the most important places you'll find anywhere on earth when it comes to agriculture and the story of how we got to where we are today. And the second is that as new developments and inventions take the place of old ones, well, we're in danger of losing that story. Alton Brazel wasn't about to let that happen. So he and a group of area citizens, authorized by the Lubbock County Commissioner's Court, began collecting tractors and combines and plows and all the other stuff that made farming for the masses possible. I had someone ask me why it's important to tell that story of how we got to where we are today. To me, that's a question that doesn't even need to be asked, but I know that some people don't get it. Well, I always think back to a conversation I had standing on the end of a pier hundreds of miles east of Lubbock at Lake of the Pines. I was watching the sunrise over the water with my good friend Milton Watts. Milton grew up on a little family farm that was located where Lake of the Pines is located today. As he told me the story of his parents and grandparents and how hard they worked to provide for their family, Milton got a little bit emotional. My daddy was a man who could raise 10 or 15 bales of cotton with a mule, and yet he wasn't able to buy a pair of overalls with what he had left, he told me. And I get choked up and can hardly talk about it. But I want people to remember men like him, and I want people to respect men like him. Well, so do I, and so do most of you, because we can never forget that life gets a little easier for every generation because of the work of those that came before us. We built our farms and ranches in this country on the shoulders of giants, hard-working women and men who got up every morning, rolled up their sleeves, and got the job done, no matter what. That's what the Bayer Museum of Agriculture is all about. Remembering yesterday, planning for tomorrow. I hope you'll find it within yourself to support this worthwhile cause. I promise you'll be glad you did. I'm Bob Phillips, and I want to thank you for letting me speak my mind.
All right, thanks, Bob. And now a man who's been really busy from here to Washington over the past several months, still wanted to spend some time talking about the museum, Congressman Jody Arrington.
Welcome to another night for the museum, and thank you for your contributions and all your support for the Bear Museum of Agriculture and for helping us capture the history and the heritage and the story of agriculture, which is, well, it's our story, and it's part of our ethos and our identity as West Texans. That's why people call us salt of the earth, because we're people of the land. We know how to help our neighbor and love and serve our community. Nobody knows how to work hard or any harder than a farmer. And all of these values are what made America great. And we need rural America. And we need all Americans to appreciate the importance of agriculture, not just because of our economy and rural development, but because of the food security and the agriculture independence and what that does to keep our nation safe. But beyond that, our nation needs the values of agriculture as much now as ever. And so what this museum represents is what I think my mission is every day in our nation's capital, and that's to make sure that all of our nation's leaders fully understand and appreciate what agriculture means to this nation. Economically, from the perspective of national security, and again, our great history and heritage. And so I am proud to partner with the museum. In fact, when I announced my candidacy, I was at the Bear Museum of Agriculture with all of the historic artifacts and machinery behind me. It just seemed to represent all that we wanted to convey to our constituents and our voters, that we know that we have to be a warrior for agriculture. We have to be a strong voice because rural America doesn't have the votes. We don't have the numbers. So what we don't have in numbers, we got to more than make up for in passion for telling the story. So again, I feel very close kinship with the museum and with Dan Taylor, and Patty Jones, and Curtis Griffith, and the many leaders on the board and the donors who every year, pitch in and dig deep to help this continue to be a beacon for all that's good about West Texas. So thank you so much, and continue to do the great work so the next generation of West Texans will fully understand what a special heritage they have and what a special thing we've got going out here on the South Plains. God bless, and go West Texas.
And now let's learn a little bit more about our program sponsor, Hearst Farm Supply, in this Sponsor Spotlight.
We're a John Deere dealer and have been since 1955, and we have service and parts available to our customers, as well as new and used equipment, and that's about as directly involved with agriculture as you can get. Great bunch of farmers or producers out here that really work hard to provide their products. They're great businessmen, and we're just blessed to have them in this area as our customers. The other thing is my employees. We're still a relatively small business for the John Deere world. Lots of these dealerships, there's 40 and 50 and 60 dealerships per entity, and we've got 7, and that's still small enough so we can call this a family business. Just friends that were wanting to get it started a long time ago and came to me, and I think I was involved with some of our first meetings that we had over there and getting it started, and we gave a donation about the first time we met and started talking about it. do try to give back to all the communities that do business with us. I really feel like once that is done, that we're going to have every single class of every single up to junior high level going through that museum, and that's just an opportunity for us to teach them about agriculture, because a lot of them never get exposed to anything with agriculture.
Mike Metzig is the membership chair. Let's hear from Mike with a membership moment.
Good evening. My name is Mike Metzig with Ag Texas Farm Credit here in Lubbock. I'm also on the board of the Baird Museum of Agriculture and chairman of the membership committee. I want to welcome all of you tonight for our night at the museum. While it's an annual event and this year's not normal, I want to say thank you to all of those that have shown continued support as we need it more than ever this year, for obvious reasons. But there's another way you can provide support to us. As a membership chairman, I want to ask all of you in the audience to please consider becoming a member. Many of you come to the Ag Museum, you come to our annual event, but we'd like you to be a member to help cover day-to-day operating expenses. Membership benefits are many. They give you free admission to the Ag Museum, free meals to our annual meeting, discounts at the gift shop, you get a quarterly newsletter, and they range in cost from $50 up. We've added a new membership level this year, a corporate sponsorship, that if your company purchases that company has their own day at the Ag Museum that they can set up and allow all the employees and their family members to come enjoy the Ag Museum. So please take a moment, review the benefits, go on our website. You can quickly sign up, or you can call into the Ag Museum and they'll sign you up. Or better yet, go by there, become a member, and then walk around and tour the museum. We thank you for your support and have a good evening.
And just a reminder that the Night for the Museum online auction is going on now. It's going to end at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. And there's lots of great stuff up for auction and raffle items as well. If you've ever spent any time at the Museum of Agriculture, you've probably seen the busiest person in there going back and forth in a blur. Next up is Executive Director Lacey Holting.
I want to start by thanking y'all for being here tonight, for watching us online on Fox 34 News Now, Facebook, YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed all the content we've been putting up, where we really got to highlight our sponsors over the last few weeks. It's amazing when COVID held out our event and we had to pivot, how all of y'all jumped on board and supported us anyway. Virtual sponsorships, major sponsorships, titles, programs, y'all made this possible, the same way you make our museum possible every day. Just wanted to give y'all a quick update on the museum and where we're at. We were only closed for a little while, about 8 weeks, and we opened back up as soon as the governor would let us, and we've been pushing forward. We pivoted another event. Instead of Party on the Prairie, we did Farmers Feeding the Front Lines, where we got to cook a meal for our first responders across Lubbock. It was a great time. Lots of great volunteers and sponsors stepped up to help us do that. Here in a second, you're going to see our Growing a Legacy video talking about our children's wing. It's a $4.3 million project, and we've raised a little over 2.5 of that, and we really need your help to push this forward. Imagine how great it will be to have a place to go with your kids and your grandkids and to learn about agriculture, where our food and fiber comes from, what farmers and ranchers do every day to keep this country running. I want to thank United Supermarkets for helping us put together these gift baskets for 108 sponsors who came on and sponsored us virtually in this fundraiser. United helped us create beautiful gift baskets representative of West Texas agriculture and locally made products. I also want to thank the people that donated product for those gift baskets, including Fairlife Milk, Panhandle Popcorn, BASF, and Cotton Incorporated. Thank you so much to United for helping us get those delivered, along with our board members who volunteered their time to deliver those gift baskets in person. And as an added bonus for our event and major sponsors, you'll receive a bottle of wine from English Newsom Cellars. We hope you enjoy this little token of our appreciation as much as we enjoy your support throughout the year. I want to thank all of our supporters out there. Those of you that are watching this right now, those that are bidding in the auction. Get those bids in. It closes as soon as this is over. And also those that are annual members. And if you're not, you can also do that on our website. We appreciate your support in whatever form it comes, because without you, we wouldn't be here. Speaking of supporters and people making things happen in the Lubbock community, it's my honor to introduce Linda Trollender with BASF for a special announcement.
Hi, I'm Linda Trollender, and I'm the Head of Research and Development for Field Crops, Seeds and Traits at BASF. I'm also a Texan and a proud Lubbockite. BASF is honored to join our friends in Lubbock to help tell the story of agriculture in West Texas. West Texas is at the forefront of cotton production in the United States. In fact, Lubbock is at the very center of the world's largest continuous cotton patch in the world, providing fiber from this region with world-renowned reputation for its quality and spinability. BASF and FiberMax are proud to be part of that heritage and this reputation. Because just like the growers of West Texas, we're committed to cotton. And our sponsorship of the FiberMax Center for Discovery is symbolic of this commitment. As a leader in the cotton industry, it is a natural fit for BASF to partner with this pillar in the Lubbock community and not only share in the rich history of agriculture in Texas, but also its innovative present and very promising future.
A lot of people in this area really care about farming and agriculture, the cotton industry, and they also care about preserving that heritage. So that's where we really came into play. Our museum started as the Lubbock County Historical Collection in 1969. Collection became a museum in 2001, and we've slowly developed over time. We've added a new building, 2 of 3 phases. We have indoor and outdoor exhibits here in this 24-acre park. Something you'll find throughout are stories of how farmers grow crops, not only now, but in our past, how they plan to do it in the future, and there's a lot of generational knowledge that passes from one group to the next.
As a company committed to the success of cotton growers and the cotton industry, it's a critical step that we help the FiberMax Center for Discovery continue to thrive here in Lubbock. We're excited to bring our new 360-degree virtual experience that we're calling From Seed to Store to the center. This new exhibit will help visitors to see every step along the way of the journey of cotton, from planting the seed to harvest, from taking that harvest to the gin and onto the spinners to be woven into fabric to make the clothes that we wear today. The FiberMax Center for Discovery will help thousands of visitors each year better understand the important role agriculture plays in providing West Texas, our nation, and the world with food, fuel, and fiber. Our hope is the center will continue to serve as a place for learning and growth for the next generation of leaders in agriculture.
If you talk to anyone that's been here, they say they found something new, saw something new, or learned something new. It is a center for discovery, and we want to see what you'll discover next at the FiberMax Center for Discovery.
Well, before we went virtual for obvious reasons this year, one of the best parts of the event is just a few steps in the door. You could just smell the food. Mr. Taylor said years ago, we're not going to do this thing if they're not eating well at the fundraiser. Every single year, it's a delicious meal. A little bit different right now. Not sure what you're eating at home right now, but guess what? You can go online and you can purchase a prime rib roll from Raider Red Meats. So delicious. You can enjoy it at home, friends and family. Maybe if you don't want to share with others, you can heat it up for days and days and days. It is delicious. Also, if you haven't bid yet on the silent auction or donated or gotten your raffle ticket just yet, you better get on it.
I'm involved with the Bear Museum of Agriculture because not only does it represent agriculture right here in Lubbock, Texas, but it's a jewel right here. When family and friends come in on the holidays, I take them out there. They're impressed with the exhibits. It makes sense. It's in the largest cotton patch in the United States, and it's a first-class museum, and it's a way to teach our young children about the history of agriculture, but also the future, what's to come, and where their food and fiber comes from, and the history behind where it came from. So I think it's a great cause. We're very proud of it, and we thank you so very much for your continued support.
And now let's learn a bit more about our auction sponsor, Guycon Pumps, in this sponsor spotlight.
Guycon we're a pump specialty company. We do distribution and manufacturing both. We integrate a lot of pumping solutions to add value to the market. Operate in municipal, residential, all types of industrial markets, with agriculture being our largest market and our biggest focus as a company. The people, absolutely the people and the customers. Our customers are awesome, and we enjoy great customer relationships and the channel to market, through the water well contractors and the producers, and they're all equally important to us. A way of life, family value, business value, ethics, integrity, hard work, say what you mean what you say. The cowboy code is the ag code. To us, that's just the way we were raised. Thank God for our parents, our grandparents, because that's where it comes from, and it keeps getting passed down through the generations, and this world needs much more of that. I heard about the Ag Museum when I first met Alton Brazel many years ago. He put together a tremendous collection of equipment, and he was really dedicated to helping the county get something going. Every time I walk in to the Ag Museum, I see something different. It's dynamic, it's engaging, and I see all the work that has been put into that museum. We're going to keep doing our part and try to encourage others to do their part to continue to have such a great place for generations to come.
Well, have you bought your raffle ticket yet for the tractor or rifle? What are you waiting for? Not much time left for it. Be sure you get those tickets purchased as soon as possible. Our keynote speaker for tonight is an author and host of American Countryside and a fantastic person. Let me introduce you to Andrew McCrae.
I've been in Lubbock now for about 24 hours, been doing stories, but certainly a pleasure to get to be with you and be here at the Ag Museum this evening. As she mentioned, American Countryside is what I do besides being on the farm. This is me, 4 years old, on the farm in Northwest Missouri with my father and my grandfather. And so for many of you in this room, you represent multi-generations tied to agriculture, and that's the case for me. And you learn a lot from those generations before you, don't you? My grandfather lived to be 98 years old, and for many summers, his job was in this building. It's the State Fairgrounds in Sedalia, Missouri. He was the beef cattle superintendent. He had a lot of interesting things that happened to him in that building. And One day, it was during the middle of the state fair, and a lady knocked on the door. He said, come in. She walked in. He didn't know her, but she was crying. And that didn't happen every day. And he said, can I help you? She said, I sure hope you can, because I'm in trouble. I need some help. He said, well, what's the problem? Well, I've been here all day at the fair, and I went to go home, and I've locked my keys in my car, and I don't know who to get to help me. And of course, this is way before there's cell phones, anything like that. And she said, I walked back into the fairgrounds, and I saw on the door here it said superintendent, and I know a superintendent's usually in charge, and so I'm hoping you can help me. He kind of laughed and said, well, it's true, I am a superintendent. She said, I'm the superintendent of beef cattle. I don't know much about getting keys out of a car, but he said, I bet I know somebody can help us. Why don't you walk with me, and we'll walk up the street here and see if we can figure it out. And that's what they did. They walked up the street, and in Missouri State Fairgrounds, the security is the Missouri Highway Patrol. And my grandfather over the years had gotten to know many of the patrolmen because he would see them on duty. He walked in, and lo and behold, the guy on duty was the superintendent of the Missouri Highway Patrol, the top guy. And my grandfather knew him. They'd had a camaraderie over the years, and so he explained what the problem was, and he said, well, I'm your guy. He said, I'm the man on duty. Let me grab my bag of tools. We'll see if we can go figure this out. So now all three of them went all the way out to the parking lot. Superintendent of the Highway Patrol worked and worked and worked. Worked for 10 minutes, couldn't get the keys out. Well, the lady was appreciative somebody was helping, but the patrolman's a little bit embarrassed. He pulled my grandfather aside. He said, Morris, I don't know what it is, the make, the model of this car. He said, I'm not having any luck. My next step is to break her window out, and I don't want to do that. There's one other guy working today that I think can help us. If you just stay with her and keep her calm, I'll run as fast as I can, see if I can find where he's working and bring him back. He said, all right. So the patrolman jogged off. 10 minutes later, he came back with a guy that he wasn't even in patrol clothes. He was plain clothes. Just came up, took the exact same tool. In 10 seconds, he had the car opened up, handed the lady her keys, and then he just turned to walk away. She was so excited and so happy. She said, well, hold on, sir, I want to pay you. And he didn't even give it a second thought. He just kept walking. He just kind of waved like that. But the patrolman, the superintendent, he began to laugh. That seemed a little bit odd, but she turned to him and said, sir, I don't know if I can pay you, but I'd sure like to because you've sure helped me. And he didn't say a word. That just seemed to make him laugh that much harder. She turned to my grandfather and said, maybe I could buy you guys lunch or something. You've been so helpful. My grandfather said, no, that's fine. We're glad to help. But the patrolman continued to laugh, and I think that got both their curiosities up. So finally, there was only one thing to do. It was time for her to go home. She was ready to go, but she said, sir, I just got to know, I really appreciate your help, but what's so funny? And finally, the patrolman quit laughing. He said, well, ma'am, you just don't understand. You really can't pay him. He is here working for me, but he's here cleaning the grounds. He's in the state pen for Grand Theft Auto. True story. My grandfather said, you know, after that, anything on that fairgrounds I needed to get into, I knew who to go find. We could get in. But rewind with me for just a second. You know, what leads a man who did not even have an 8th grade education, who's the superintendent of beef cattle, to take a lady who needs to get her keys out of a car and goes to the highway patrol office and then goes out to the parking lot, and he spent all this time. And if you'd asked my grandfather, well, you know, Granddad, why did you do all that? He might have responded with 2 little simple words. He might have said, why not? I didn't mean that sarcastically, but whenever he said, why not, it was for you to reflect and think on, well, why shouldn't you do that? Why not? And in his mind, those types of things were not only a good thing to do, but they spoke volumes about who he was and what happened in this building and about beef cattle and about agriculture and all of this. And so the question then becomes, why versus why not? And certainly in this time, we could ask a lot of whys, couldn't we? Why has this happened? Why has this happened to me? Why? And why is an important question to ask. It's one that helps us evaluate, but why is usually a question that looks backwards. And my grandfather's point was this: you need to ask just as many why nots. Because when you say why not, what if, how could, those are all questions that look forward. And so in his 98 years of life, 95 on the farm, he began to say, why not? What if? How can we make this happen? And so tonight we're going to talk about, well, what happens when people look at life from the why nots? And in my interviews, we've done about 5,000 now in 24 years of doing American Countryside. What sets those people apart? They're often average people that are doing extraordinary things. So what sets them apart? So tonight I'm going to show you some pictures, share some stories quickly. You'll see some places we've done broadcasts, and I think people find them interesting. Places like Denmark and Moscow, interview we did inside the Kremlin, some dangerous places, Baghdad, Iran. What are people thinking in places like Harvard or Yale? And I find when people begin to see the pictures, they begin to understand what it means to say, why not? When people begin to see the pictures of places like Denmark, Wisconsin, Moscow, Idaho, the interview we did inside the Kremlin, Oklahoma, dangerous places like Baghdad, Florida, even Iran, Texas. I know it's Iran. What about people in Harvard, Nebraska, or even Yale, Oklahoma? I realize at this point you think I'm just trying to be a little bit clever or maybe even a little bit slick, but really, I don't think it's a novelty at all. I really don't think it's all that peculiar. I believe that tonight, it's not bragging for me to tell you that I can show you the road to success, and I can also help you get around your competition as well. But here's the thing, you can put two people in the exact same location, and you surround them with all the same things. One person will find their own slice of heaven or paradise. Another person will find their own slice of hell. There is one town of hell, only one town in the U.S. named Hell. It's Hell, Michigan. I've interviewed the mayor. The good news about the residents of Hell, they do have a good attitude about where they live. But here's the thing, whether you live life saying why does this happen to me, or you live life saying why not, what if, how could we do this, either way you decide to look at it, you're going to be correct. And so what is the answer? So as you can tell, I like to have a little fun with this, but when I think about the people that say why not, there are three things that I think set them apart, and I'll quickly share them with you. There are three P's that I found in interviewing these folks. One thing that they do very well is they live life personally and purposely. And what I mean by that is that they're personable in how they deal with others. It doesn't mean you have to be the life of the party. But it certainly means that they're a person that you'd like to be around. Somebody that smiles, is willing to look at things on the best way they can, even when times are tough. And they're purposeful. They have a direction. They're trying to do something that's of good, bigger than just themselves. Let me explain the personal this way. I think we in rural and agricultural America are pretty good at this, but we don't give ourselves credit for it. I haven't doctored this sign you're about to see, this true sign. But where else but rural America would we look at a Dairy Queen, not just as a place to eat, we would look at it also as a tourist activity. If your Dairy Queen's a tourist activity, you're saying why not? You're looking at a different side of life, aren't you? For just a moment, I want you to get a picture of a plumber in your mind, okay? Maybe a stereotypical plumber, all right, not the greatest image you have. I want to see if the plumber you have in your mind is like the plumber that I work with. Real plumber, real truck, not real bottom. I always joke with audiences and say, you know, the danger of me showing you this picture is this may be all you remember of anything I say tonight. And that wouldn't be all bad because, you know, how do you add life to life itself? How are you somebody that is personable? How do we live life so that people would like to be around us? It's really a matter of saying why, or in this guy's case, why not? Let me give you an example, though, and more than just kind of superficial and fun, of how it might play out in business, because I do want to give us something to kind of latch onto. I was born in 1972, and if my parents had enough money in 1972 to invest $1 in every single publicly traded company in the United States in 1972, and 30 years later, for my 30th birthday, we cashed out, the company that would have returned the most money would have been, I'll let you think on that for just a second, 1972 to 2002. Certainly there are a lot of good candidates, and when I ask audiences this, they sometimes say, well, it's Walmart, or it's Microsoft, or IBM, or Apple, all good guesses. But the answer is actually a company in an industry in which almost everybody else went bankrupt or merged or went out of business. The answer is Southwest Airlines. Now, there's maybe something to said about the time period we chose, but those 30 years is a pretty long track record. And certainly there have been books written about how Southwest did all of this, but it was a company that was very personal and personable. You know, they were personal because, wow, we're going to have our employees work with the customers in new ways. You can wear shorts to work. You can have fun with the boarding announcements. You can have fun with the safety announcements, but purposeful. And they were also purposeful in that we're not going to use a hub and spoke, but we're going to fly point to point. We'll turn the planes faster. We'll have free luggage. We'll do all these types of things that we have a purpose, but we are personal as well. It's interesting, Warren Buffett, of course, who's invested in so many companies. Warren Buffett said of airlines, he said if a far-sighted capitalist had been president of Kitty Hawk, he would have done his successors a huge favor by shooting Orville down. That's what Warren Buffett thought of airlines, but Southwest turned a profit every year for over 4 decades. So there's something to be said about how we deal with others and the purpose that we see in life. Now I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do any of that, and you could be successful. 3 years ago, the most profitable airline, Southwest was profitable, but the most profitable was an airline called Spirit. Anybody ever flown Spirit? No, Spirit doesn't operate out of Lubbock. Spirit's an interesting airline. They are home to the Bear Fare. Really low ticket prices, but you pay for every single thing you want. So if you want a Coke, it's like $2. If you want a pillow, it's like $5. Seat assignment, $10. If you lose cabin pressure, the masks fall down, you can use them for $50. I mean, that's how it works. Spirit feels they've done something wrong if they don't lag last in customer service. That's how Spirit operates. And so you can be a person that is all about the money and just hard driving and not care how you treat people, and you might do very well for a little bit. It's interesting. Business magazine, Bloomberg Business, said Spirit isn't an airline for everyone, but so far it hasn't had to be. And I would say for most of us in this room, whether it's we as individuals or as a farm or as a company, we're people that are in it for the long haul. We aren't a Spirit, we're a Southwest. And we're the folks that begin to say, why not? So these individuals and companies tend to be personal and purposeful in what they do. So if you want something to have statistics, this is the statistics for the night, but Fortune did a survey of the 100 best companies to work for, and the companies in the top 100 saw their stock prices rise an average of 14% per year during that 8-year period. Companies not in the top 100, an average rise of 6% per year during the 8-year period. It's really hard to measure what being personal and purposeful is worth, but we know it's important. And we know we like to be around those people and those companies and those farms and those museums and those organizations. We like that. But these statistics say, yeah, it's probably good business as well. There's one final P though, and I think it's the one that sets good leaders, great organizations apart. And it has everything to do with this little story that we shot years ago. This was Morristown, New Jersey, and most people don't realize that Morristown's home to the Sinai. It's where they train Sinai dogs. It's a registered trademark. Only dogs that go through there are supposed to be called Sinai dogs. So I sat down with the head trainer of the Sinai. That was kind of an interesting interview. And so we began to talk about training dogs and what all goes into that. So I'm winding up the interview and I'm kind of looking for an interesting question to get an interesting response out of him. So I said, what's the most difficult thing to train a dog to do? I said, is that to cross a busy street? Because the dog's supposed to be colorblind. How does the dog read the lights to be able to know how to do all that? He kind of shrugged his shoulders, said, well, tough, but not the toughest. He said, think about it. You're blind, you walk to the corner, you give the command to go. The dog still has eyes. If there's a car coming, it pretty well knows don't get in front of the car. It's instinct. So he said it's intelligent disobedience to disobey the command, but the dog knows by instinct it doesn't really want to get in front of that car. That makes sense. So I said, well, what's the most difficult thing then? He kind of laughed like this. He said, well, it's that big oak tree out there in the yard. He had a big window. You could see out there, beautiful yard, huge trees. I didn't know what he was talking about. He could tell I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, well, how high off the ground is the lowest limb on that tree? And I said, oh, it's probably sticking out there about 5 feet off the ground. He said, toughest thing is when I put a blind person on that leash for the first time. That dog must realize it cannot go underneath that tree anymore. Otherwise, I got a lot of blind people around here with a lot of headaches. He said, that just isn't going to cut it. He said, that limb will hit them square in the face every single time because it's 5 feet off the ground. Then he went on and said something that made a lot of sense. He said, when our graduates leave here, and they really are graduates, they put them in caps and gowns and put composite photos of every single graduating class. He said, when our graduates leave here, they can no longer see this world from 2 feet off the ground. Each one of our dogs must learn to see the world from 5 feet off the ground. Just like working with people, he said, you only see through your eyes, you're just going to give them a lot of headaches. And so, you know, at the Sinai, this is how they train. They don't train under the oak tree. They train with a 2x6 and a couple of step ladders, and the dog can go underneath that all day long and never be hurt. But as soon as it has somebody attached to it, there's a problem. And so I found that the folks that are not only personal and purposeful also have great perspective. They have the ability to get outside of what they know and do and see it from somebody else's point of view. And boy, how valuable that is in today's world. Is a dog, Sinai dog, really a leader? Or is it simply a guide, working with somebody in tandem to be able to steer around the obstacles to get where you want to go? Let me give you a couple examples in closing. One that's kind of more lighthearted and fun, but one that digs a little bit deeper of perspective. We did a story last year with a lady named Nancy Goodwin. And this is Nancy Goodwin. She lives in Gaze, Illinois. Gaze is a little town, about 150 people. And behind her is the two-story outhouse. This isn't something they just created. It is historical. There are only 3, she tells me, in the entire United States that are two-story outhouses. Now, attached to it used to be an apartment building of a century ago, all right? Before they had indoor plumbing, they had a 2-story apartment building, and the people on the 2nd story, so they didn't have to go all the way downstairs, they could go and use the 2nd story of this outhouse that was attached to the building. And I know some of you are wondering what happens if 2 people are in at the same time, one below, one above. They had that taken care of as well, and we explained that in the TV report, all right? But they went to tear down the apartment building, and Nancy said, we can't tear down the 2-story outhouse. It's really important, it's historical. And so she had a purpose behind this and said, we're going to save it. And then she became very personal about it and said, this is a wonderful thing to show people. And so, of course, she was our guide. And you can tell she's a fun person. She's even got a postcard attached to her sweatshirt that has a picture of the 2-story outhouse on the front of it. So you can tell she loves the 2-story outhouse. Here's the other thing most people don't know about Nancy. If you stop to see the 2-story outhouse, she's looking in a little box there. And she has a postcard in her hand. What's happened is anybody that stops by, they would not know this. It's just a guest register. It does not say anything. It just says sign the guest register. If you sign the guest register and then drop the slip, you sign a slip and drop it in that box, Nancy comes every day and picks those up. She takes them back to her house and she sits and writes a personal note on the back of a 2-story outhouse postcard thanking you for coming to visit. And today, there are over a dozen tour buses stopping every year in Gaze, Illinois to see a 2-story outhouse that could have been torn down and really nobody would care except somebody was, yeah, sure, they had fun with it. They were personal and purposeful, but they also saw it from somebody else's point of view. They had perspective. Let me give you one other example of this, a small town that really has inspired me. One of my favorite stories to share. This town is Shickley, Nebraska, a town of about 300 people. And about 20 years ago, they'd had a prominent farmer pass away in their community. And the next day, some of the folks were sitting around the coffee shop, and the banker, the local banker, it was a family-owned bank, he said to the folks gathered around, he said, you know what really bothers me? We have a funeral like we did yesterday, and sooner or later, that family, they live away from here now. They've all moved off. They'll come down to the bank, and they'll withdraw all the CDs, and they'll sell off all the land, and the last thing we'll ever see of them are their taillights heading out of town. Don't get me wrong, he said, they have a right to do whatever they want to with those assets. But he said, I'm mad at the rest of us because we have a great little town, and if we don't get busy sharing our story and what a wonderful place this is, everybody's taillights are going to leave town. And so Shickley was down to, like I said, about 300 people. They still had their school and a few things, but they were like a lot of small places. They were probably moving the wrong direction. And so that bore fruit. What they began to do is they decided, we'll set up a little endowment. We'll raise money and we won't touch the principal, but we'll use the interest. And we'll use the interest to do good things in our community. And we're going to begin to share the story of Shickley. And they had the goal to personally talk to every single person in their school district, which they did. And then they began to share the story as best they could over the internet and social media. And that story began to spread, and it was just a few local townspeople that began to share the story of Shickley. And so it was this little group of people that began to transform Shickley. What I have for you, I'm on their little mailing list every year. And this is their last mailing that I got from them that explains what's happened in the 20 years prior. It says in 2017, grants will be awarded in April and October. To date, over $295,000 of grants have been awarded. Another $60,000 will be dispersed next year. And to keep informed, it says where you can go. With your generous help, our goal is to have an endowment fund balance, including expectancies, of $8 million by the end of 2020. Together, this goal is very achievable. No donation is too small to make a difference. I'm here to tell you that nobody gave them $1 million. Nobody gave them $500,000. They simply got busy and began to share their story, and people began to give. And then they began to have their donations when somebody passed in their family. They began to give those donations. And today, Shickley, Nebraska has more money from the interest on an endowment than the city has in tax revenue. Their school is strong. They saved their grocery store. A graduate came back. They have new little businesses. They have a new library. They're working on a new swimming pool. It was simply a group of people, instead of saying, why this happened to us? Why? They said, why not? Why not? And so those type of lessons may be applied to us when we begin to think about our own lives. Why versus why not? And maybe they're lessons that we think about on our farm or our business or at a museum or wherever we may be. And so to conclude, what are then the keys for tonight? Well, while each one of us would like to live on Easy Street, it's really about the road to better leadership. And if I were to sum everything up that I think I've learned from the folks that I've interviewed over the years, it's summed up in one sign. Kind of funny on the surface, but makes a lot of sense. And that sign is that sometimes you really got to stop. And what do I mean by that? You know, we each know that it would be good if we were personal. It would be good if we smiled more or we laughed a little bit, even in the tough times. We know that we should have a purpose and do things bigger than ourselves. And it'd be good if we had perspective, or maybe even wrote a note or told somebody how big of a difference they made, or helped raise money for a museum or different causes. We all know that. But I found the people that really stand out are the ones that really stopped and did it. When you go home tonight, you can blow through every stop sign and stop light, but eventually you'll have an accident or get a ticket. The part of every journey is stopping. That's not stopping progress. It's an important thing to do. And so tonight, simply stop and begin to do those things more. It's so very important. And so we're tempted sometimes to say, why? Why did this happen to me? Maybe I'm hexed. People don't even care to know my name. But I think the good leaders in the good little towns and good organizations are saying, why not? Why not? What if? How could we do it? And when you stop and think about it, we have a lot to be thankful for. We have freedom. We have independence and liberty all around us. And we're just around the corner. There's a little bit of hope. And just up the road, you might find some people that are happy, of course. And also, you'll find some people with a good heart. Whenever you begin to think about those things and have a little bit of grit, you'll begin to find that you will create your own slice of paradise. Because while there is only one hell, Michigan, there are almost a single town of paradise in every single state. And so don't live life on a last chance. Make the most of your first chance. And when you do that, it's more than just a place that you live. It is a place that we call home. And so from my home to yours, I appreciate the chance to be with you this evening. I've alluded to some different things tonight. American Countryside is where you'll find those broadcasts and some of our TV. If you go on, all of this is free, but the Farm Journal TV app is where you'll find some of those stories, like the two-story outhouse. And if you go to Total Town Makeovers, where you find those stories like Shickley, and we've done some podcasts. Our goal is to simply try to share good stories going on in the U.S., but also stories that help make a difference in small towns in rural America. And so you may love to connect and find some of those stories as well. Thank you again, and thank you for what you're doing here. I travel quite a bit in this job. You really have something to be very proud of. This is an amazing place, and it's only getting better with what you're doing. So thank you, and may God bless you in all you do. Thank you.
I can tell you over the years, being able to go into the museum, one of the great things is when you see a group of students there, and for some of them it's their first visit, getting to really connect with what agriculture means to each one of them, being able to see how it has adapted, evolved, and grown right within our area and across the country. It's an incredible asset for our area. It is so important to preserve the history of American agriculture, and you're certainly welcome to do so. Come visit and see what you will discover at 1121 Canyon Lake Drive, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5. Great visit there at the museum. For Fox 34 and the FiberMax Center for Discovery, I'm Matt Ernst. Thanks for joining us and supporting the wonderful facility. Remember, the drawing for the gun raffle will be on Facebook Live. That's 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 30th. That's tomorrow. Hope you have a great night.